You are in a conversation and someone makes a simple comment about the weather. While they have moved on to another topic, you are still thinking about climate patterns, the implications of seasonal shifts, and what this means for agricultural systems 3 continents away. Everyone else is laughing at a joke you missed because you were still processing layers they never saw. This is not about being smarter than other people. This is about having a cognitive processing style that operates differently. And understanding this difference matters because it affects every relationship you have, every conversation you navigate, and how you experience the world fundamentally. I am going to show you 6 signs that your thinking patterns operate at a depth that most people do not naturally access, what neuroscience research reveals about why this happens, and most importantly, how to bridge the gap without diminishing who you are or exhausting yourself trying to think more shallowly. This is not about superiority. This is about understanding a cognitive style that comes with both profound gifts and real challenges. Think about the last conversation where you felt completely misunderstood. What were you trying to express that others could not grasp? Keep that in mind as we continue. In 2018, psychologist Dr. Elke van Hoof at Vrije University at Brussels published research on what she terms high cognitive complexity. Her findings revealed that approximately 15 to 20% of people process information through multiple interconnected frameworks simultaneously, seeing patterns, implications, and connections that remain invisible to others processing the same information sequentially or at surface level. This is not about intelligence quotient measures. This is about cognitive architecture. Your brain does not just process information. Your brain processes information about the information, examines the meta-patterns, considers contextual implications, and automatically runs multiple scenario analyses before others have finished processing the primary data point. Dr. Kazimierz Dabrowski's research on cognitive and emotional intensity showed that people with this processing style experience what he called positive disintegration. They perpetually question existing frameworks, see contradictions others miss, and feel compelled to synthesize understanding at levels that most conversation never approaches. This is not overthinking in the dysfunctional sense. This is a fundamentally different operating system. The challenge emerges not from the thinking itself but from existing in a world where most communication operates at levels that leave you perpetually understimulated while simultaneously being perceived as overcomplicating simple matters. Source: Dr. Elke van Hoof, Vrije University at Brussels. Dr. Kazimierz Dabrowski, Theory of Positive Disintegration. Links in description. You are at a social gathering and someone asks what you do. Before you can answer, your mind is already considering which aspect of your work to highlight based on their probable frame of reference, what misconceptions might arise from oversimplification, and what level of detail will create connection rather than confusion. This processing happens in seconds while they wait for a simple job title. You give the short answer because you have learned that the honest answer would require 20 minutes of context they did not request. This happens because your cognitive architecture automatically contextualizes every piece of information within multiple frameworks. You cannot turn this off. When someone asks a simple question, your brain immediately considers philosophical implications, systemic connections, historical patterns, and future ramifications. Surface-level exchange feels like trying to have a conversation while your brain is simultaneously composing a symphony. The dissonance is exhausting. Someone complains about a specific workplace issue. While they are focused on the immediate frustration, you have already identified that this represents a symptom of misaligned incentive structures, which connects to organizational culture dynamics, which traces back to leadership communication patterns established during the company's formation phase. You see the root system while others are describing one leaf. This pattern recognition is not analysis you choose to perform. This is how your brain automatically processes information. Research by Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman on creative cognition shows that highly complex thinkers have enhanced connectivity between the default mode network and the executive control network in the brain. This means you are simultaneously observing, analyzing, and synthesizing patterns without conscious effort. The challenge is that by the time you have traced the pattern to its origins and implications, the conversation has moved on to solutions addressing symptoms rather than causes. Someone states a popular opinion as fact. Your immediate response is not agreement or disagreement but rather curiosity about the underlying assumptions, the historical context that created this framework, the voices excluded from this perspective, and the implications if the opposite were true. You are not trying to be difficult. You are incapable of accepting any framework without examining its construction. This cognitive style aligns with what Dr. Robert Sternberg calls practical creativity. You see that frameworks are human constructs rather than objective truths. This creates profound insights but also profound isolation because most social cohesion relies on shared acceptance of unexamined frameworks. When you question what others consider foundational, you are not challenging them personally. You are revealing that your mind cannot rest on unexamined premises. But this feels threatening to those whose identity and security depend on those frameworks remaining unquestioned. You can manage 15 minutes of weather discussion and weekend plans, but you feel your energy depleting with each exchange. Then someone mentions an idea that interests you. Suddenly you are alert, engaged, alive. Hours pass in what feels like minutes. You leave the conversation energized rather than depleted. This is not social awkwardness. This is cognitive understimulation versus appropriate stimulation. Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow states reveals that deep thinkers require complexity matching their processing capacity to achieve engagement. Simple exchanges provide insufficient cognitive nutrition. Your brain needs ideas with depth, problems with layers, discussions that explore rather than merely exchange. When denied this, you experience something similar to intellectual starvation, which manifests as the exhaustion people misidentify as introversion or social anxiety. Most people can go days or weeks without contemplating mortality, meaning, or the ultimate significance of daily actions. You cannot go hours. You are perpetually aware that you exist, that existence itself is strange and unexplained, that every choice carries weight within both personal narrative and broader human context. This is not depression or morbidity. This is what happens when your cognitive processing includes meta-awareness as a constant background operation. Dr. Irvin Yalom's research on existential psychology describes this as existential isolation. You are aware of layers of reality that most people's default consciousness filters out for psychological protection. You see the absurdity and beauty and tragedy simultaneously. You cannot unsee it. This awareness makes you profoundly thoughtful but also occasionally paralyzed by the weight of significance you perceive in choices others make automatically. You are surrounded by people who care about you. You have conversations and relationships and community. And yet you feel fundamentally alone because no one seems to process reality at the depths you naturally inhabit. You have learned to translate your thoughts into accessible language, to meet people where they are, to participate in the surface world. But you carry a constant awareness that you are editing yourself, simplifying, reducing complexity to maintain connection. This is what Dr. Elaine Aron describes in her research on sensory processing sensitivity and cognitive complexity. You are not lonely because you lack relationships. You are lonely because full authentic expression of your cognitive experience rarely finds reception. The isolation is not social but existential. You wonder if anyone truly knows you when you must constantly translate your natural thought patterns into forms others can receive. Pause. How many of these patterns do you recognize in yourself? This recognition matters because it shifts self-perception from defective to different. Understanding these patterns is not about accepting isolation. It is about developing strategies that honor your cognitive style while building genuine connection. First, seek cognitive peers rather than forcing depth in every relationship. Not everyone needs to process at your level. But you need at least one or two people who do. These connections provide the cognitive stimulation and authentic expression your mind requires. They are not better relationships than others. They are necessary relationships for your specific architecture. Second, develop translation skills without self-judgment. You are not dumbing yourself down when you simplify complex thoughts for broader accessibility. You are building bridges. Architects who design bridges are not diminishing their expertise by making structures people can actually use. Translation is a skill, not a betrayal of your authentic self. Third, create outlets for full cognitive expression. Writing, research, teaching, creative work, philosophical discussion groups. Your mind needs spaces where it can operate at full capacity without constant editing. These outlets are not luxuries. They are psychological necessities for people with high cognitive complexity. Fourth, recognize that your way of thinking carries both gifts and costs. You see what others miss. You also miss what others naturally grasp. You understand systems but sometimes struggle with simplicity. You process depth but sometimes lose presence. Neither style is superior. Both are necessary for human collective intelligence. The deepest truth about thinking deeply is this: you are not broken. You are not overthinking. You are not making life unnecessarily complicated. You have a cognitive architecture that processes information through multiple interconnected layers automatically. This brings profound insight and equally profound isolation. The world needs people who see patterns before they become crises. The world needs people who question frameworks before they calcify into oppression. The world needs people who cannot rest on shallow answers and simple certainties. But those people need to learn how to inhabit a world that largely operates at levels that leave them perpetually understimulated. Remember that conversation you thought about at the beginning where you felt completely misunderstood. Now you can see it differently. You were not failing to communicate clearly. You were attempting to translate multidimensional understanding into linear language for people operating with different processing architectures. That translation challenge is real, not evidence of your inadequacy. If this framework helped you recognize your cognitive style, share it. Comment which sign resonated most deeply. And remember, depth of thought is not superior to breadth of presence. Both matter. Both contribute. Your task is not to think less deeply. Your task is to find the people and spaces where your depth finds resonance while developing the skills to build bridges to those who think differently. That is not compromise. That is wisdom. That is how cognitive complexity serves connection rather than creating isolation.